I'm your host, Christine Marie, and I am once again in a little bit of a different situation and also doing something a little bit different tonight. I am going to be doing meal prep. My sister is moving, and I will not be able to be in town this upcoming week to help her. I think I mentioned on yesterday's live that I will be joining my parents and my two younger sisters on their cruise. We're going to be flying into Rome next week, and then making our way up to Greece, and then to Malta, which I'm so excited about. And then we're going to Cannes, France, and I have to look at the rest of the agenda. I'm not sure exactly where else we're going, but I'm just so excited. I do not have any regrets in my life, which I'm so grateful for. I really don't have anything. And yet, as I was thinking, last week I did an exercise where I was in Prince Edward Island and just completely alone for almost 2 weeks. And anytime I do this practice of kind of going into the wilderness, so to say, I always have some sort of revelation. And one of my revelations last week was I just took that exercise that I did when I turned 30, which was writing my eulogy, and I expounded on it. And I actually wrote, and I didn't so much write it, actually, I still need to do that, but I really took time to consider, who do I want to be in relation to those closest to me? And that was really important. Like, who do I want them to remember me as? Who do I want to be known as to them? And frankly, what that did was, it wasn't just who do I want to be, but what are the decisions I now want to make as a result of this type of ideal relationship? So for every single priority in our life, we must outline and identify what the ideal is in that regard. So we talk all the time about, in our business, having our mission, having our values, having our business goals, and where are we headed. But rarely do we ever do that in our personal life. So the more we effectively run our personal lives like we do our businesses, the more effective our personal lives are going to be, the more we will actually live with intention. It's not coming home after 9 to 5 or coming out of the office at 5 o'clock. But no, we're actually still on. And being off the clock, actually, that's really when it's so exciting, that we really get to continue with the creation and brushstrokes that is the canvas of our lives, and ultimately what constitutes our legacy. And I've been leaning into legacy a lot over the last 2 weeks. As I was in Prince Edward Island, I eliminated so many inputs. I eliminated books, obviously TV shows, but even music. It just was this really sacred time. I really felt called to this. And frankly, it was really hard. I felt like I was going through withdrawal. I felt antsy, and I don't normally feel antsy. Normally I always have something to do. And if I go for a walk, I will intentionally go do something, which is the activity of walking, without my phone. And it's for the purpose of, my goal is to experience peace or come back refreshed. But to have almost like my baseline be lacking of inputs, it was hard. It was really uncomfortable, just for almost, I think my nervous system is used to those continuous hits. And so to not have it, it was like, what is going on? Like, what is happening? And it kind of starts, when our nervous system gets activated to the point of our 4 Fs come into play, the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. That's when they come in, when they're sensing uncertainty. So anytime we do something out of the ordinary with our nervous system, such as no inputs, no stimulation, it's going to act out. That's why, even if we make a change for the better, we still experience a seemingly danger zone. So, for example, if a woman leaves an abusive relationship, she will actually usually go back to that abusive partner, because that's what her nervous system knows. It's predictable. They can count on it. And so, y'all, if any of you and me are seeking to change the manner in which we engage with our partners, and we came from a previous relationship or marriage that was unhealthy, it is going to feel so opposite. It's going to feel uncomfortable. It's actually not going to feel good when you're in health, when you're in safety. And actually, this is one of the things I was talking about with one of my known founders the other week. We were doing the Knowing Intensive, and we realized that because of the way he was raised, he will intentionally create fires to then put them out. And what I was realizing just the other day was how I think that I can try to do that in my own relationships. It's like, is everything going to be fine? What's going to go wrong? And then by way of me looking for something that might go wrong because of fear, because of past data. The thing is we self-perpetuate. I'll wait to say what I was going to say until I finish that thought. We end up self-perpetuating that very thing which we were afraid would happen because we're so fixated on it, it ends up happening. But what I want to call out here is that as we're looking to create new neurological pathways, right? New programs, it's all a program. Our nervous system is running on what it knows. So the reason why we know, that's the name of the show in case you didn't know. Oh my, it's late. The reason why we know is so that we can bring old subconscious patterns and programs into consciousness that then we can then change them. If you missed the Knowing show last week on Sunday, my brother was on, Jared Hoffman. And man, it was one of my very favorite conversations. It was so, so good. He brought up just this he said it probably more elegantly and simply than I've heard most people say, just information about the nervous system. We have to get our nervous system to a state of peace in order to then introduce a new program. So, which makes total sense. I cannot train my body to do something new and my brain to do something new if it's on high alert. That's such an obvious thing, but I've never thought about it in that way that he put it. And so what then that means is that we don't just need to train our body to exist in peace, but we actually need to exist in peace on a regular basis if we want to see any real change in our lives. Otherwise, we're just going to be repeating old patterns. So part of, we started out this conversation talking about creating our ideal and creating the ideal in every single regard, whether that's professional or personal, relationships, goals, mission, values, etc. What is the ideal? Who do I want to be? What is the legacy I want to leave behind? We can't ever go and achieve that if we don't do away with the old programs and teach ourselves new ones. And that has to and can only be done through the conduit of peace, through the conduit of a nervous system that is not on high alert. So that's why this deep inner work is so important. And there's, I'm still listening to the book, Letting Go by David Hawkins. I feel like I eat books. Like I read a chapter and I feel full. Like I now go implement what I just learned. And so it takes me a while to get through books, but it's so good. And he talks about this a lot. There's the reason why I bring him up is because there's a couple different ways we can go about kind of conjuring up real change in our lives. And one of those is through what he talks about, the process of letting go and really allowing for us to have that emotion and release. Another is through therapy, actually going in and doing some of that work. However, and I was actually just listening to this while I was packing. For those of you who are just joining, I'm at my sister's house and she's moving. And so I'm packing and food prepping for them because I will be on a cruise in Italy and Rome and France next week. So putting in my sisterly duty. What David Hawkins was just talking about on the book was effectively a lot of therapists haven't ever been able to get to the point of knowing themselves and knowing their identity. So they actually are effectively unable to really get us to the level that we need to go to and the freedom that we're seeking by letting go of these emotions and being able to transcend our current programs and our current nervous system out of the state of survival to higher. He assigns numerical value to different emotions. So courage is a higher emotional numerical value than ego, let's say. And so as you progress upward in this hierarchical structure of emotional values and energy levels, you're letting go and you're breaking free as you move upward. But what's so interesting is therapy definitely can be a modality. And I actually, attended therapy. I ended up doing so much of it was almost like the self-perpetuated questions and inner work that really ended up me creating the knowing framework throughout that time. So I think therapy 100% is good. 100%. Actually, one of our clients is a therapist and I love him and would recommend working with him. And he's also a coach. So there's people, man, if they're healthy and they're a therapist, that's ideal and great. And then there's just so much opportunity to continue getting to our emotional state and our nervous system to a baseline. I went to Dr. Joe Dispenza's retreat in August. Hold on. I see a little chat here and I just want to pull it up. Paul, I just talked about you. Paul is my therapist client that I was just talking about. He said, when you are in stress mode, the brain literally cannot learn or integrate new information effectively. See, he knows. Paul, I love you. I'm so glad for the work you do. Thank you for how you're making an impact. And I love working with you. Joe Dispenza's meditations are so good. One of the things that's really interesting is that once you are able to get your body to that place of stasis, let's say, which a lot of times is necessary, especially if you've had trauma, it's almost unwise to try to do that work alone because of what your body might do when it starts going into its fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. So normally it's not. It's like a very aggressive manifestation if you've literally been through trauma. So that's where it is so helpful to hold someone's hand. But as your body is more regulated and you actually can start kind of moving forward and really seeking change and starting to get to those higher emotional energies, it's really cool because in that process, you're able to self-perpetuate your own work. You're able to self-perpetuate your own growth, self-perpetuate your own almost like transcendence in that hierarchy. But, yes, you can do it with somebody else, but man, that's really empowering to be able to do that work alone. And y'all, that's the goal. Our bodies, they respond to our mind, and our mind responds to ultimately the internal state of our soul and spirit. And so with this whole concept of eliminating inputs over the last week and a half and almost like a digital detox, I found that I was effectively self-perpetuating my own inputs by way of listening to my soul and listening to, when the spiritual pathway is awakened and almost like open and there's not things getting in the way by way of, external inputs getting in the way. Man, you get revelations from your intuition, from God, from nature and creation. And y'all, it's really beautiful. It's really exciting, the things that you learn. And over the last week and a half, man, things have become so clear for me. I've become really, really clear that my goal with knowing and kind of what I'm going to be doing with that. And actually, I'd be curious to hear y'all's thoughts on this. So the Craft and Calling is a niche community and podcast and newsletter for tradespeople. My family has a 100-year-old painting business. My brother and I joined as partners, and I was really helping on the business side, brand side, marketing side, lead generation. And my brother was helping on the business growth of things on the field and like kind of implementing new systems to free up my dad. And so he and I both were kind of tackling, I was very much so top of funnel and then also business. And then he was, and finance, and then he was boots on the ground. And so in that process, it was really cool over the last 2 weeks to all of a sudden realize, like, man, my mission with the Craft and Calling is to build legacy. Like, that's it. I want every single person is creating a legacy, whether they realize it or not. So then the question is, well, what's the legacy you're writing? What's the life you're designing and creating every single day? And y'all, if we don't take the time to sit with that and ask ourselves that question, we're living on autopilot. We are likely living someone else's dream, likely living someone else's life, fixing someone else's problems. Because here's the thing. I've seen this time and time again with executives, with my own self, with other businesses that have been our clients. The more people go inward and say, oh man, I actually really, really hate this problem. A service lies there, a product lies there, a solution lies there that likely addresses a problem for many other people. So if we're actually taking the time to go inward and come to know ourselves, come to know what we love, what we value, what we hate, we're going to stumble upon the very reason why we're here in the first place. I believe this to my core, that every single person has something unique. Every single person has a why of their existence and reason for being here. And they have to kind of uncover their calling. And let's say they have a family. Well, that's part of your calling. If you've got a family, exhibit A, like, you don't have to search too much further, but there's probably also something really unique there too. So that was something that I realized over the last week for the craft and calling, but it was only by way of the elimination of inputs, digital detox, that I had space to even hear from my own self. Y'all, how much are we just filling our brains with everybody else? I even had this thought. I woke up in the morning and I was doing my vertical alignment and I had music playing, and it's what I call my Jesus music. And I was listening to it. And I realized, and I was singing, and then I realized, I was like, it's 5 a.m. and I'm singing someone else's words. What would I say right now? What would I sing or journal or to think about right now? And so I turned it off and I just kept eliminating input after input after input, even ones that were good. But it was like, man, when I came into that time, I felt full. I felt at capacity. I felt like I couldn't take anything else. Like I needed to sort through the inputs to allow for them to be filtered, to be eliminated. The lymphatic system eliminates toxins and waste from our body. The lymphatic system eliminates the toxins and waste in our brain. And so I've asked this question a couple times. Y'all, think about it. What is your process for eliminating the toxins and waste in your spirit, in your soul? With every single input, there's a consequence. And it could be really good. It could be a really, really good output. But every single input that we put into our systems, we then have to deal with. So one of the things that I actually was planning to talk about tonight is the topic of forgiveness. Y'all, it's so interesting because I was having the most wonderful day yesterday. It was like so magical. I felt like I was living a little fairy tale, and it was wonderful. I even talked about it on the Knowing Show. And I just was like on cloud nine, driving through Maine, driving through all these little Hallmark type towns. It was just so cute. I found a woman who directs Hallmark films, and I'm going to reach out to her because I want to do another film again, because I'm like, and you get to go to like Vermont. And so obviously, and so I was driving with my top down in my Mustang. It was so much fun. It was just beautiful and vibrant. And that evening I got on the phone with somebody, and I almost said this. I almost said, by the way, I'm having a great day, and please don't ruin it. And we talked, and then something came up, and they said something benign, but man, it was so funny. I had a sensitivity around the topic, and immediately I just was like, you know what? Never mind. Let's effectively end the conversation. And I wasn't rude, but they could tell that like I wasn't pleased. And it was so funny. It really messed with my peace, so to say. Like I just had been in such like a calm and like joyful, peaceful state. I felt very high on David Hawkins' like hierarchy of the emotional values. And I felt really high in that. And man, when he said what he said, it just like took me all the way down. And I was thinking about it, and I was like, there definitely seemed to be an energy behind what they were saying. Like it didn't feel like the words were benign, but it felt weird. Like there was something strange about it. And I really sat with it, because here's what my MO has been in any kind of moment that there's like discomfort on my end, or I don't like what's said. Immediately, I will justify them and blame myself and assume radical responsibility. After all, that's what my book Knowing is about, is assuming radical responsibility for, when my husband left. It's like, okay, what's every tiny little part that I could contributed to this relationship ending? Even if it was 5%, 50%, 90%, any part is my responsibility. And so as I was sitting with this last night, I was really seeking to be curious, because we can never analyze something and really get to the truth of it if there's judgment. So I was seeking to be curious, and I was like, okay, there definitely seemed to be an off energy that they had when they mentioned what they said. They're also, this is a hot topic for me, and I know that, and they know that. And so kind of what I concluded to was, what do I need right now? So I asked that question, like, what do I need from this person in regards to this conversation and in regards to this topic? Like, what would really serve me moving forward? So because otherwise, that person's never going to feel safe to talk about something that's very normal. It was finances. It was finances. And I felt uncomfortable. And so I stopped talking about it. And this is a conversation that people need to have. And so I started talking about, we were talking about finances. I felt uncomfortable, and then we stopped talking about it. And so I was, in retrospect, like, okay, what was my part? What did I do wrong? There did seem to be a weird energy there. I realized, one, I have not really been straightforward about what I need from that person. I've realized how I need to change and how I need to approach it, but I've never communicated what I need in return. And that is so problematic, because, man, that person has zero chance, because I'm not giving them even the opportunity to meet me where I'm at in a topic that I feel sensitive about, in a specific application of it. Finances is such a broad topic. So in one particular area. So that was really, really important. It was actually it's my responsibility to express what I need. I haven't. And it's fundamentally setting this other person up for failure anytime we need to talk about it, because I've never said what I needed. And here's the thing that's scary about saying what we need is, maybe they won't give it to us. Maybe it won't be received well. But by way of me not even giving it a chance, I am trying to control the entire, or not trying to, because I don't think it was conscious, but there's an element of control throughout the entire dynamic of that relationship, for so long as I don't clearly communicate my needs. And they're always at a disadvantage, because they don't know the truth. Every time the truth is spoken, there's more freedom than there was a moment before. So, one, I need to express my own needs. Two, it's really important that I establish boundaries around this topic. So, okay, this is what I need from you. But here's a boundary, because this is a sensitive topic for me. I don't want to just like casually talk about it. This is the conversation that I do feel vulnerable about. We need to go into the arena. And I talk about this concept of, it's the same that Teddy Roosevelt talked about in his speech, The Citizens in the Republic, 1910 in Paris. And in that speech, there's a section on the man in the arena. And that section is just notorious. He talks about how it's not the critic on the sidelines who's sneering and pointing and jeering at you, who has never done anything and who will never know the feeling of triumph nor the feeling of defeat. They won't know anything because they've never actually done the work, but rather the triumph and the success lies in the person whose face is marred and dirty and grimy with dust, and they're doing the work. So I talk about the Knowing Arena. That's a service I offer for executives. Honestly, someone was asking me if I would talk to their little kid and talk to them about emotional intelligence. So there's this Knowing Arena concept, right? And I need to treat this topic, this particular topic in the realm of finances, I need to treat that like, hey, by the way, we're going into the arena. Because anytime we feel vulnerable about something, we are on an emotional level going into the arena. We have to tell the people closest to us whenever we're actually doing that. Because otherwise, they're going to talk about it like, no problem. This is not a big deal. And yet we're on high alert. We're already feeling vulnerable. This happened to me actually a couple weeks ago with my partner when he brought something up and I was like, oh yeah, no problem. Like I've already thought through that. But he was feeling very emotionally vulnerable. I didn't see that he was in the arena. And so yesterday I was in the arena on finances. I didn't know I was. And now that I realize this topic is just a hot one for me, it's my fundamental responsibility to put up guardrails and to alert him and to let them know, hey, by the way, this is a hot topic. Every time we talk about it, for the most part, until I really get to the root of it, it's going to be us going into the arena. And I really would appreciate, some sensitivity around it. So that's my responsibility, to express my needs and to also create boundaries for every time I go into the arena. Now, I was thinking about this morning. So, forgiveness. There's something about forgiveness where, it's a reclamation. It's a reclamation of the power which we have doled out. I realized last night that person couldn't have really impacted me if I hadn't had that original trigger in the first place. Yes, they said something that pulled the trigger, but ultimately the gun was loaded in the first place. And y'all, isn't that the truth? People can't activate us without our consent. And we give consent by accident by not working through it in the first place. So when we talk about forgiveness, maybe that person didn't really do anything wrong yesterday when they were just talking about, this financial concern or question or conversation. Maybe there was a little bit of a weird energy from them. But the reason why forgiveness is actually really important is because forgiveness is a reclamation, a taking back of the power that I gave them in the first place for them to have an impact on me. And it was to the point of they made that benign comment and my day changed. I was having such a wonderful day. And so, man, guys, the more we're able to exist in relationships, especially in a parent-child relationship, the more we're able to exist with our kids, where our kids can feel safe with us to have an emotional reaction. And their emotional reaction is not a reflection of who we are as parents. They're not a reflection of, how well we're doing in raising them. They're not a reflection of just any part of us, but it's just them, working through whatever they need to work through. And maybe there are going to be times when it's like, oh man, how can I be better? But y'all, the more we're actually able to keep our power and operate in vertical alignment, where we're not doling out power to other people to affirm us or validate us, the more we're actually able to keep this strength and prowess about us so that we can sit with them in their experience if they ever need us, welcome them into our experience. But it's never a doling out of power, a doling out of need for affirmation or validation. And so anytime, it's so true, anytime we're triggered, how is that a mirror for us about something in us that needs to be healed? There have been a couple of times, oh, it's the worst. There have been a couple of times, specifically with my partner, where I've gotten triggered and man, I wanted to find a reason to blame him. And I couldn't. It was because of an old program. And I just needed to break the program. One time in particular, I came and sat next to him and I was like, I feel really embarrassed right now. I'm running an old program. I'm so sorry. And he just hugged me. He was so gracious about it. But y'all, that's the hardest part, is getting out of the old program. It's moving away from the comfort and the familiarity of sitting in the negative feeling. It's actually more comfortable to sit in the negative feeling and stay there than get out of it. And it's embarrassing. Like, you feel small. You feel small. I felt small. Like I felt like a kid. I didn't even want to look at him. And I was like, well, let me just start by saying I feel embarrassed. And in saying I felt embarrassed, my walls came down. because I was being honest with myself too. So the act of vulnerability with somebody else, ideally, we've done the work ourselves. But if we're trying to work through conflict in real time, man, are we even telling ourselves the truth, much less the other person? And sometimes it's telling the other person we realize the truth for ourselves. But man, it's hard. It can be really embarrassing. And I think even just using that language of I feel embarrassed is helpful, because hopefully that other person is able to take that and not use it against us. They're able to provide a safe place. A therapist said this to me a while ago, and I just love it. She said, when you start seeing these parts of you coming out with your partner, it actually is a really beautiful sign, because you finally feel safe to heal those parts of you that have been suppressed or covered up for so long. And so in all actuality, it's really like a compliment, which is so weird to say, but it's really a compliment to you and your partner when you guys are fighting. The most dangerous thing is when you sit there in silence, is when you don't move through it, is when you don't work through it. And honestly, that's something that I still wrestle with, because growing up, anger was just never, it never was an option. And the goal, my mom was wonderful. She was a stay-at-home mom, 6 kids, God freaking bless her. And it was all like, work it out, just go spend time together. Anytime we had a conflict as siblings, it was like, that's a sign you need to spend time together. Y'all, it is so true. When we're really, I think of love as kind of filling up the gas tank. And so when our gas tank is empty with our partner, of course we're going to have conflict. But if we know the love language for each one of us, and we know what really fills them up and what fills us up, we have to freaking know what fills us up. Otherwise, our partners are just, hopefully they're trying, but they're never going to do it right. And then the problem is that our subconscious is then creating a narrative in response to their lack of ability to meet your needs, because you're not saying it in the first place. So the ability to know what our needs are requires a sitting in our experience, the eliminating of inputs, digital inputs specifically, but even honestly, even books. What do you think? Create your life, create your own adventure, create your own experience. There's something so beautiful about dreams and thinking about the possibilities and imagining what life can be. It's amazing. But y'all, we get to live, let's not outsource adventure. Let's not outsource experience. Let's not outsource life. And I think so much of the time we end up doing that rather than actually living our own adventure. I see a chat. I'm pulling it up. Paul, memories can't tell time, but we can change the conclusions. Yes. Oh my gosh. You said something. You were on the Knowing podcast. Memories can't tell time, but we can change the conclusions. Oh, I'm excited. We're chatting next week, and I actually want to talk about that. Let's talk about that on the Knowing Show. I'm excited. Y'all, what a blessing that we get to create our own adventures and create our own lives, create the trajectory of them, create the stories, create the memories. But the question is, are we being good stewards of them? When's the last time you actually did an audit of your life? When's the last time you actually sat and took stock of how much you're actually really engaging with life in a visceral way versus living vicariously through other people's experiences? And I'm not talking about just going to a networking conference or a business conference. I'm talking about living life, engaging with life in a visceral way. There's even something, like I'm cooking right now. Like there's something about cooking, just using your hands and just when I was on the island of Ischia in Italy, working in the vineyard was like healing. It felt like therapy in a sense. This morning I sat out in the sun and read a book and just felt the heat. When's the last time we got actually a good dose of vitamin D? It's actually medicine. But y'all, we just spend so much time inside. So all that to say, It is such incredibly beautiful weather. The more time that we take to know what we need and assume responsibility for saying it and communicating it, drawing boundaries as a result, the more we're going to be able to live in peace with ourselves and with our partners and with our families, the more we'll actually be able to engage with life in freedom because we've reclaimed our power. We've stopped outsourcing creativity and beauty, and we're creating it for ourselves and finding it in nature and finding it in that which is organic and original and authentic, both in ourselves and in other people and in creation. So we have to start by the elimination of inputs, by the elimination of all things digital. We were not made to live in a digital world. We were made to live in a physical one. But for so long as we're outsourcing experience, thoughts, creativity, we're not really going to be able to experience the potency of life. So with that, I'm going to toss my chicken and my veggies, and I will talk to you tomorrow.